Kia ora everyone, and kia ora Whanganui. Jonathan Sykes here from Whanganui and Partners. One thing we've talked about here at Whanganui and Partners is just providing everyone who is interested, and hopefully there are some out there, with some insight and a bit more background into ourselves and some of our approach and the work that we do. So as it was my idea, I've had to stick my hand up and go first. So enjoy, and as in true marketing fashion, which is my area, I have obviously prepared a presentation to go through. Right, well, this is a bit scary. You get to see me twice, even scarier for me. So despite apparently looking like I'm about 23, I've actually had 2 decades in my marketing career, which is quite the thought. Hence the beard, trying to make sure I actually look something approaching my actual age. So anyway, let's get into it. I started my marketing career working for a little company called Rank Group, which is a FTSE 100 company, not so little actually, thousands of employees. And I was the marketing manager for a sports betting brand there called Blue Square. It was subsequently bought out by a competitor, a larger competitor. Such is life, such is business. But that was a fantastic experience where, amongst the many achievements, was proud to lead £2 million TV-led campaign for the brand, which really resulted in strong increases to its revenue, which made it so attractive it got bought. So such is life, I had to move on and applied my trade at AXA. Not potentially so well known in New Zealand these days. I understand it used to operate here, but it is the #1 insurance brand in the world, according to Interbrand, for the last 8 years or so, operating in 57 countries, and in the UK, 10,000 employees or so. So I was there, I had a fairly short stint, but oversaw around about £10 million of advertising activity, and that the aim of that was to increase AXA's brand awareness in the UK. I thought it was competitive at Rank Group, in an incredibly competitive space. But such is a typical, very typical story. I met my now wife in London and came over to her native New Zealand, which I absolutely love. And most recently was the head of marketing at UCOL, based in Palmerston North, but many trips to Whanganui, and some of my team were here in Whanganui. And yeah, I was really proud to deliver an increase in year-on-year enrolments in a very competitive space. And it was the first time that UCOL had achieved that in 10 years. And I hadn't been there for 10 years. That was my first year there. So that was a really proud achievement for me. But I now found myself attracted to this opportunity to market all things Whanganui, to be the lead as far as our brand is concerned, and to work with our leads in sector areas to really make them as strong as they can be from a marketing perspective. A lot of challenges and a lot of opportunities, a lot of work to do and a lot of work done. And I'm sure there are many things you can think of. It's great to hear and see the passion for the place that people have that live here, but also emerging that don't have any quite clear connection. So the whole purpose of my presentation, and hopefully you're still with me, is to give you an insight into some of the achievements, but mainly some of the approaches and insights that we take, so you can get a better sense of that. We can't start anywhere else but around COVID-19. It's been a really tough period for our businesses, enforced due to the health pandemic. Our team were and are incredibly busy working directly with individual businesses, which then, from my perspective, resulted in a business support campaign. So hopefully, if you are a business owner in Whanganui, you were reached by that. Many people were, around about 16,000, and at a high frequency as well. You should have seen our ads on average 15 or 16 times. Campaign was across LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. We did some print and also Google search as well. And so it resulted in us being able to support businesses with examples like the Regional Business Partners Network funding of over $100,000 just during that COVID period. And it has risen significantly since then. Still a service offered around New Zealand, and obviously for local businesses, it's still there to talk to us about and make inquiries about. So I just wanted to start off with that. And Youth Employment Success was a platform that we announced a couple of weeks ago. And it's an initiative designed to connect our younger people with employment experiences. So if you're, again, involved in business, check it out. It'd be great to add you into this service that we have just launched and will continue to market in partnership with 100% Suite. And of course, our retailers, our hospitality area, and our tourism providers, including accommodation, have been incredibly affected by this COVID period. So for the very first time, we have run a winter tourism campaign launched just before Queen's birthday weekend. And that's what I'm going to dive into as an example, just so you can get a feel for our approach, the work we've done. We won't obsess with the tactics too much. I know people love to talk about, I like that billboard, I like that poster, I don't like this, I don't like that. That's cool. That's great to get the engagement and the opinion. My view is that it's never about one channel wins or one channel doesn't. It's about who you're trying to reach and thinking about who they are, what media is that they consume, and making sure your messages are in those places. And there's some other considerations as well, which we'll go into. But hey, let's dive in. I touched on the tactics. So there's a temptation, and particularly in this kind of period, absolutely with the need for speed, to dive straight into the tactics. But and marketers will know this, but if you start off with, we're going to deliver a social media X, we are going to do a TV ad, and you don't start from a position of, what's the market? Who are we targeting? What's our position? How are we going to be different here? What's our unique selling point? You are likely to fail. You may get a result. It might be a short-term result, but it's built on pretty shaky foundations. So a lot of the work, even in the winter tourism campaign, is about just getting a sense of the market. What are we trying to do? What's changed here? What hasn't changed? I always go back to Amazon's strategy when they're trying to think about trends going forward. What won't change? What will people always need from us? And while that's to a degree focusing on the product, it's just the same when it comes to advertising. People do talk about advertising, marketing, communications, and sales like they're all the same thing. I think it's really important that people understand that sales, communication, advertising are all parts of marketing. Let's also consider the numbers, and anyone that has ever worked under me or worked closely with me will know that, yes, I do like a graph, so we had to throw one in. But I think it's really important, and some people don't seem to still have registered this, that it doesn't matter what graph you throw up in recent times, population growth, consumer spend, tourism growth, house prices, we are ahead of the curve, and long may it continue. We've had lags, we've had population dropping from 46,000 to 41,000 between the mid-90s and into the 2000s. This has been an incredible period. And like some people would have heard me talk about, if we were down here and we're trying to get up there, we're still trying to get there. Nothing's really changed from the COVID period in that respect. Businesses are obviously, affected, and some are struggling. But in terms of where we're trying to get overall, it shouldn't change where we're trying to get to. Our consumer spend, just to make an example here, I've said recent, 3.5 years, if you consider that recent, it has been ahead in terms of growth year on year. So this is year on year growth every month. Where's it at? Green line's Whanganui. Yep, we've compared ourselves to our closest neighbours here. We've got the stats for other places if they're of interest. They are to us. We've been ahead of Palmerston North and then the New Zealand trend overall for every month for the last 3 years. So that's got to give some confidence that something is working. There's a product here people want. There's demand. Look at the house prices. There is a product people want to purchase, engage in, consume, experience, however you want to describe it. So there's no need to panic. And this takes us into the deeper dive on the winter tourism campaign in terms of the approach, the idea of share of voice and share of market. So this won't be new to marketers listening to this, but this is a really important point because it has been mentioned, you've just rolled out the same creative. Yep, absolutely. But please don't think this was done like, we'll just roll out the creative. It's really closely considered. We did look at a new creative campaign idea, if you like. One thing that I noticed coming into Whanganui Partners, and this is not exclusive to Whanganui Partners, this is rife across businesses all around the world, large and small, is that if there's a number in a budget line that says anything close to advertising, it will be referred to as a campaign, and I've referred to our winter tourism campaign. It'll be referred to as a campaign, and then that suddenly floats into, we need a new idea, we need new creative. It's all new. Now, one observation I made when I came in to Whanganui Partners and working with the guys here is we're not putting enough money into media. We're putting too much time and energy. You've got to make sure the creative's right, of course. Don't get me wrong there, and we'll go into that. But if you're happy with the creative, you think there's something in it, there is no need to chop and change at every possible turning point. So it's a really hard thing from a marketer's perspective to be brave and do nothing. You can be accused of being lazy, but you've got to think about a couple of concepts here. Share of market and share of voice. So very simply, your share of market is 1%. How do you increase your share of market? Well, you have to have a share of voice that is higher than that 1%. It sounds very simple, but it's based on an absolute ton of research by the experts. Very, very small here, Les Burnett and Peter Field, who have done huge amounts of work in understanding the effectiveness of marketing. And I was fortunate enough to be trained or do a couple of training courses with Les. And there's a lot of work and data behind this that says if you can increase your share of voice, so effectively your media spend, then eventually an equilibrium will be found and your share of market will increase. So our media spend, as much of the budget we have available to us, whatever that may be, we really need to make sure it's got as big a chance as possible of landing in the minds of people, the people that we are targeting quite clearly. And it might be not so outlandish to say that the marketing budget of Whanganui may be less than other places around New Zealand. So every single marketing dollar we've got is important to make sure that it's going towards that landing somewhere in people's minds. And I'm always a little bit wary about anecdotals, but someone yesterday did tell me I'm hearing more and more about Whanganui is a great place to spend a weekend. And I was pretty pretty pleased to hear that little bit of advice, because that's our current campaign idea, as you may have seen. So that's the concept behind share of voice and being brave around not spending zillions of hours chopping and changing creative. You will need to do it from time to time, but creative burnout is a thing really that only exists in marketers' minds. You can go a couple of years running the same creative as long as it's strong. Brands are very, very small things in people's minds. Think about how much you've thought about countdown today. B&Z, Wickles, Spark, big brands, well known. How much have you thought about them, really? So that tiny piece in someone's mind about us, we need to make sure that we can just increase that a little bit, and it will flow onto effects for our businesses. If you don't believe me, then whose ad do you think this is? There's a point also here in terms of differentiation, of having a clear idea, of standing out in the market. And there has not been, and I'm aware of the cliches, but there has not been a period more rife for this just soup, everyone coming together, this amalgamation of brands and ideas, and we're here for you, we're here to support you. Yes, they are. Yes, we are at Whanganui Partners. But is it distinctive? Is it memorable? Is it going to stand out from the crowd? And here in the Pack and Save example, is it consistent? Have you been brave enough to run the same creative for 10 years? Now, I'm still going to play the new card here, and I'm not trying to suggest that the Whanganui creative is, yep, we've nailed it. But nevertheless, there is a value in keeping that message out there to provide the resonance, to make sure that the people you tried to reach in January, you're trying to reach them again. They haven't not connected the dots, if that made sense. Double negative, don't do that. Every COVID-19 commercial has been exactly the same. And if this will load up, and let's play it quickly, you'll see what I mean. It's a little bit American focused, but you'll get the point.
When we first opened our doors.
Since 1926.
Since 1978. For 60 years.
For 75 years.
For over 80 years. In 90 years.
Over 100 years.
Nationwide has been on your side.
Restaurants have always been there for you.
Nissan has been with you through thick and thin. We will do what we've always done.
Take care of people.
We're people.
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 People. People.
People. Family.
Family.
Family. Family.
Family. Family.
Family.
Family.
Family.
Families are families.
Families.
Even now. Especially now. Especially now.
Right now.
Now more than ever.
More than ever.
Stop. You get the idea, and if you want to watch that in full, every COVID-19 commercial is exactly the same. The point I'm trying to make is that all those ads on their own are actually quite nice. There are some that I thought, oh, they've got the emotion, they've got the tone, but they're not thinking about the market. They're all saying the same thing. So how do you remember that brand over another? Quite hard. You might have experienced that and thought that yourself. And if your email inboxes are anything to go by, I'd suggest that's also another point. And we've had to be really aware of that at Whanganui Partners, because with the funding, for example, through Regional Business Partners Network, well, we are here for you as a business, but how do you deliver in a way that is going to be right? And a part of that is about the targeting of the media, obviously, but it's something to be conscious of. So when we thought about the winter tourism campaign, we were very conscious that everyone is going to do the same thing. And what I mean by that, and I was asked the other day by Paula, our strategic lead officer for visitor industries, what do you think about this ad for Ruapehu? And I looked at it and I was sort of a bit confused, because it's not unusual, but it's like, well, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. But then I sort of thought back, they're doing this clever thing where everyone's pretending to be on a Zoom call and they pan out. It's all right. And if you're in the sort of RTO space, or you're an operator, you might have seen it, you might have thought it was really cool. But everyone's doing the same thing. Everyone's suggesting, because you can't go overseas, or you've got to come here. It's kind of like Egypt, but not quite the same. Rubbish. What were you trying to stand out for before? What are you really known for? What's the thing that you want people to come here for? It hasn't changed. Don't get me wrong. There will be some good ads relating to COVID-19. One of the best ones I've seen was for Colgate. There will be some ones that aren't so good. But the danger is that we merge and morph into the very same thing. So that's something we need to be incredibly conscious of. During the lockdown period, I looked at research that had been conducted globally, and it looks at ads that were done pre-COVID and were done during COVID, and tested them in COVID to look for the effectiveness of these ads. And basically there was no correlation. So to say some COVID ads were great, some weren't So if you produced your ad, if you'd made an ad in February, it was kind of saying, don't change it. And that's exactly what we found with the summer, looking at the summer creative. Well, yeah, we could do something cool for winter here, but why? So that's where we've landed with that. Oh, that's a bit of animation for there. And it's thinking also about the sales funnel. So a classic concept from a marketing point of view. But again, it's this point around, let's not try and do everything at once. It doesn't really work like that. So if you're in the market for a car, you need to be exposed to advertising for a couple of years for that moment, longer, 5, 10, turns how. You need to be exposed to that. And then when it gets to the pointy end, they also need to be there. Advertising has an effect over a long period of time, 2 or 3 years. And yet people think about it as being very transactional. It's like marketing out today, result tomorrow. There is a result. And of course, that's why we have delivered a winter tourism campaign. And we're calling it Winter Tourism Campaign. And why am I calling it campaign for what I've just said? But you get the idea. But it's just considering that there is going to be an effect by advertising now for our spring and summer as well. And we may be, for some people, only just delivering awareness that's going to lead to an effect later down the line. Some people go down this process really, really quickly. They like their impulse, they make a decision quickly, they're off, they're doing it. Brilliant, let's have some more of you. And for other people, they were exposed to our advertising, they've heard from people, they've got a connection, they came to they heard about one of our events, or they may have come to an event. They've got that desire, they're a bit further down, and they can take an action quicker because it's an easier sale, an easier purchase to consider. And you can add in here, different media tactics, and that's fairly basic from a marketing perspective, but it's just making that point. And we had this at UCOL as well, because deciding where to study is again, people talked about it like advertising today results in student tomorrow. Well, no, surprise, surprise, when the surveying was done, it was a 1 to 2 year period, and for many was longer. Of course, for some it was shorter, but the average was over a longer period of time. So consider the advertising now to have a benefit for today and tomorrow, but further down the track as well. So it doesn't necessarily have to show snow and people wearing coats to be relevant. And I've talked about targeting, and so we're going to give away some of the trade secrets here, oh dear, but some people might have pressed pause and they'll never know this anyway. So we won't get into the fine detail, but we have been targeting 2 segments during the summer, and again, and we call them adventure and relax and learn. And so the kind of activities that you see in the creative, in the video, in the stills, and the posters and whatnot, they're the kind of things we think they would do. The adventure couple would go up the river, they would do the biking, they might go to the glassworks, they'll go out for a meal at night. They're younger, they may or may not have kids. Relax and learn, they're a bit older, they're more likely to go to places like Paloma Gardens, to the Sargent. It's not to say one or the other wouldn't, but these are the points made through the research. So it's really important, again, I've made that point, that we're trying to target these people over a concerted period of time. We have different tactics for the different audiences. We may do, let's say, a certain billboard that may show both. That's a bit more of a mass media and awareness thing, but the mixture might be different. We are advertising on TVNZ on demand, and the mix is different and the programming is different. What you spot a relax and learn add-on will be, of course, linked to the kind of programming we think that person is going to watch. And geographically, of course, we have a finite budget. We want to really make sure that these people are reached. So there's a geographical target as well within the lower North Island. So really, we're talking about a bunch of, tens of thousands of people that we're trying to target. And we really want to make sure that over time, they've seen our message, that it's consistent, that we aren't zigzagging around, that while everyone else does that, we will keep a level of consistency. That's not to say that in 4 months you might see brand new creative, and I've touched on how we're not suggesting this is perfect and we have nailed it, but the approach still stands true. And I've used tourism here as an example, but it could run through, even though they're less developed and obviously something to work on, could run through our business stuff, attracting businesses, attracting new residents if that's a desire, attracting investors. It would be the same approach, the target market we're trying to reach, the delivery of the creative. It's not consistent to the point, though, where we shall never change. There will be points where we need to be agile. COVID-19, for example, speed to market was incredibly important. And that played to our advantage in terms of the approach. And others have done brilliantly well to get things out. Some have got media attention. But think about there's 31 RTOs. How many ads can you recall? And if you're in the sector, you probably can name a few. But try and think about that person we're trying to target. How many would they know? And think about our competitive set and who we're trying to take on and how we're performing, and think about those graphs as well and what's going on in that respect. So I finished on a blank slide because I've left you with a completely green space in terms of where we can go with our advertising from here, but hopefully it provides some interesting insights into the approach, that we provide you with some transparency over what we're trying to do. We've got a lot of ambition to take this brand forwards. It will take time. Within our plans for next year, we will address some of those points that you have. Sorry about my disappearing shoulders. You know, it's not really Whanganui. I'm not on Jury Hill. You've guessed that by now. We will address those points in terms of our existing creative that need to be updated. Yes, I'm talking billboards. Yes, I'm talking websites. Our soon to be revealed statement of intent or annual plan addresses those points, and there are budgets against those. So if you want to talk to the team, talk to me, talk to others. Obviously the strategic leads if you are involved in a particular area, but if your interest is marketing, if you have some kind of stake in the brand of Whanganui, you feel you do in some respects, let's also get in touch as well. We've got to send out a unified message to the people we are trying to reach. We've all got to understand as well those people we're trying to reach. We're a challenger brand, we're a smaller brand, we've got a small share of market. So it's about getting that share of voice as high as it possibly can be. So I've bored you for long enough, and thank you for going through my PowerPoint slide with me. Next up, if he records the video, will be Tim Easton talking to you about our business engagement sessions as we plan our economic recovery. Although recovery for me is not the end point. Let's think about where we're trying to get in the long term. So thank you very much, and look forward to the dialogue from here. Cheers.